Right now, you're alone in the house. Maybe you're eating standing up. Maybe you're talking to yourself. Maybe you're doing something you'd never describe to another person. Then you hear a sound. Someone's coming. And in an instant, without deciding to, you become a slightly different person. This happens to everyone, every single day, and most people assume it's just normal self-consciousness, a mild social reflex. But what's actually happening is more interesting than that. Your brain runs a system so automatic, so deeply wired, that it can change your behavior before you're even aware it's happening. And it doesn't even need a real person to do it. Think about the difference between who you are when you're completely alone and who you are when someone is watching. Alone, you move differently, you eat differently, you make sounds you'd never make in public. You abandon tasks halfway through. You talk to objects. You have entire conversations with yourself. Watched, you sit up straighter. You finish what you started. You become more careful, more considered, more aware of every small thing you do. The interesting part is this: you didn't decide to make those changes. They happened automatically. Which means somewhere in your brain there's a system that's constantly monitoring one question. Is anyone watching right now? And depending on the answer, it runs a completely different program. This isn't a modern anxiety, it's ancient. For most of human history, being watched meant something significant. It meant you were being evaluated by the group, by a threat, by someone with power. And how you behaved in that moment had real consequences: acceptance, rejection, safety, danger. So your brain evolved to respond to the presence of an observer the way it responds to any significant signal, immediately, automatically, without asking you. Long before you had language, long before you could reason about what other people think of you, your brain was already tracking whether you were being observed and adjusting. Psychologists call this impression management, but it doesn't require intention, it doesn't require vanity. It's a reflex, as automatic as flinching. In the late 1800s, a scientist named Norman Triplett noticed something strange. Cyclists rode faster when racing against other people than when racing against the clock alone. He ran experiments to test this and found the same pattern in other tasks. The mere presence of another person changed performance. This became one of the first documented findings in social psychology. It was called social facilitation. Decades later, researchers found it was more complicated. The presence of others doesn't always improve performance. For simple, well-practiced tasks, it helps. For complex, unfamiliar tasks, it can hurt. Because your brain, in performance mode, is running on a kind of heightened awareness that works well for things you already know, but adds pressure to things you don't. This is why you can feel both sharper and more nervous when someone is watching. Both responses come from the same system. Here's where it gets strange. Your brain doesn't actually need a real person present to trigger this response. In one study, researchers placed a poster on the wall with a pair of eyes on it. Just a printed image, not a person, not a camera, just eyes. People behaved more carefully, more honestly, more socially aware, simply because of the image. The brain saw eyes, and it activated the observer response. In another study, people left more money in the honesty box for coffee when a photo of eyes was nearby versus a photo of flowers. Same room, same box, different image on the wall. Your brain is scanning for observers even when it knows there's no one really there. Most people think of performance as something deliberate. You perform when you're on stage, when you're in an interview, when you're trying to impress someone. But the performance your brain runs when it detects a watcher isn't deliberate at all. It's happening right now in every conversation you're in. The way you hold your face, the way you pace your words, the things you choose to say and the things you choose not to, all of it is quietly shaped by the awareness of being seen. And the version of you that exists in those moments, careful, considered, performed, is not less real than the version alone.
It's just a different mode, running on different priorities. There's something worth sitting with here. The version of you that exists when nobody's watching, that version never has to perform, never has to manage impressions, never has to track how it's being received. It can just exist. And for most people, that version gets very little time. Because even when you're physically alone, you might be on a call or posting something or imagining how someone would react to what you're doing. The observer doesn't have to be present to run the program. Sometimes just the thought of being seen is enough. There are two versions of you, the one that exists when nobody's looking and the one that appears the moment someone does. Neither one is fake. Neither one is the real you. They're both you, just running on different systems, responding to different conditions. The question isn't which one is more authentic. The question is, how often do you get to be the one nobody's watching? And what does that version of you do with that space? This is why you change when someone's watching.